Maimer. We're holding on line 4 of the text. And we were talking about that Hashem has already a rotzen that is muskim, that's already agreed, that's already in his mind, kaviyachol, before the hachtorah, before the Yid incarnate him, that he would like to be king, and because of that muskim dike hachlota in his mind, so therefore he is open to the actual hachtorah that Yidden will do. And the reason why he has that hachlota, that haskama for the idea of ruling and being a king, we said it's because Hashem pictured in his mind the delight that he will receive from the avodah of tzaddikim. That's what it's called. Tzaddikim. He consulted tzaddikim. It doesn't mean he actually consulted them. What it means is that he saw and he pictured and he realized the great delight that he would have from the avodah of tzaddikim. That made this haskama, that made this hachlata, where in his mind he said, it would be a nice thing to be king. And then when the Yidden come ahead on Rosh Hashanah and are machter him and are mevatel, so that brings out that he should have the rotzen goli, the revealed will to be king. So again, line 4 on the 7th page of the copies. The Inyan Zeb, this idea that Hashem's tainug of the avodah of Neshamas Yisrael makes by Hashem that original hachlota, that original heskim, that original agreement that it would be a nice thing to be a king. So that is Moiral Goydla Ilu the Neshamas Yisrael. That shows on the great quality, the great advantage, how high Neshamas Yisrael are. The Yisrael, all of Machshava, that Yidden arose in Hashem's thought. Therefore, through the Yidden becomes the decision for the kingship. That was decided by him that the avoid of Neshamas Yisrael will awaken the revealed will. And over there, the Chassidus explains, he doesn't go that much into detail in this mimer, in Hashem's will, in Hashem's rotzen, that's before the Tzimtzum Harishon, in his revealed will to Hashem, there's a level that Hashem pictured and evaluated and saw in his mind, Kaviyachol, everything that would later on come out in actuality. So all the entire Seder Ishtalshlus and the whole creation and the whole purpose and everything was already part of his will, that he had an open will for kingship. And this picturing and reviewing and seeing in his mind everything it'll be, there's all matters of Seder Ishtalshlus, like the Mittler Rebbe explains at length. So now the Rebbe in the second paragraph on this page is going to connect this with a word that the Mezritcher Magid says that is often brought down in the Rebbe's Mamor. Based on what we just now learned, it will be understood that what the Mezritcher Magid writes at the beginning of a Sefer Ur Torah, and the Rebbe calls it parenthetically Dvar Pelo L'chura. Seemingly, it's a wondrous thing, and we'll soon see why it's such a wonder. That Hashem derived delight from the actions of tzaddikim, and he constricted himself to come down into the world and deal with the tzaddikim, to have that enjoyment, just like like a father, that even though he might be a great Talmud Chacham, he might be a great genius, a Goin Olam, he'll still and all constrict his mind for his small child to be able to play with him silly children's games. In a similar vein, the Eibishter constricts his greatness to deal with us minor beings of seemingly no consequence. Moisif and the Mezritcher Magid adds, this is not just after the creation of the world. Once Hashem created us, so then we are now receiving his tzimtzum that the Eibishter wants to join with us through the tzimtzum. But even more so, even before by Hashem, even before the Yidden were created. So the image, the form of the Yidden are engraved in his thought, and the Mezritcher Mag gives a mashal, just like a person's son is engraved in his father's mind, and he can't forget about his son and not remember that he has a son or whatever. It's part of his very being. But even though by a father, that's only after he has a child. Before he has a child, it's not possible to say that term. But Hashem, we just now said, it's even before the Yidden were created that the child, the Yidden, are engraved in his mind. And the reason for it is, so the Rebbe continues in line 19, since by Hashem, the past and the future are all it's all one. There's no time, it's beyond time, and therefore it's all taking place at the same time. And therefore, even though the Yidden did not yet come into being, there is no not yet by the Eibishter. So it's all, the Yidden are engraved in Hashem's mind even before we actually became into being. So the Rebbe in line 20 asks to explain, what's this Dvar Pella? What's this wonder about this? So the Rebbe says, it's seemingly obvious. Seemingly it's not understood. What is the Mezritcher Magi trying to let us know? What is he trying to tell us? It's an obvious and simple matter that the Hashem knows initially already everything that's going to be in actuality. But the explanation of this is, the novelty of this is, the fact that he knows initially is in the level of thought and will that's still beyond the level of revelation. It's not in the revealed will that over there in the revealed thought. So because by Hashem there's no time, so therefore we're engraved over there. That's not the Chiddush. We're talking about the Mezritcher Magid's Chiddush is in level. That should be B'china Zu, line 25. Ein adayin avoid tzadikim. Loi b'b'chinas poil v'loi b'b'chinas koyach. In this level, the level of not the Ratzon HaGoli, there's obviously not the actual avoid tzadikim, because tzadikim did not come to being yet. It's not even in a state of potential, because the state of potential only applies in the Ratzon HaGoli, in the revealed will, where we said before, Shashir ba'atzme b'koyach kol mashas lis b'poyel, he saw in his mind, in potential, everything that will be in actuality. The Chiddush over here is in a level where there isn't even the existence of a neshama, of a yid, even in a state of koyach, in a potential state, but rather just an awareness that there will be such a thing. Mikol Malkim, line 27, he says, still in all, this knowledge and awareness is as if there was actually the action of tzaddikim, it is what's responsible for that decision that he said, it would be a nice thing to be a king. And also, by extension, because of that decision that he thinks to himself would be a nice thing to be a king, it's causing the awakening of the open will now, and also that potential that he has in his mind, all that's going to be later on, but even in such a manner by Hashem, it says, by a person down here, when I have something in potential, but I don't bring it into the actual, it's lacking. By Hashem, when he has the potential, it's not lacking the actual. It's all there in that state of potential. So all of this, that it should come from the potential to the actual, all of this is caused because the Yidden's Shoirish are so high that they are the ones that are responsible for that decision that he agrees within himself. It would be a nice thing to be a king, and then he allows himself to be awakened by the Hachtara, that he should have the Rotzna Goli until he has this Hashara B'Koyach. Top of the 8th page of the Maimer Oizvav. We still need to understand this very fact. The initial thing that we said, that because of the Hashem pictured in himself the delight that he will have from the avodah of the Yidden, that causes by Hashem this hachlata, this decision that, be a nice thing to be a king. The lechura seemingly kivun she'inyan hamaluchu davar she'ein be'erech klal. Since the idea of being a king is something that's incomparable, in other words, between the people and the king, like we mentioned before, that a king cannot be unless you have a nation. From the word extinguish, that the nation is their connection to Hashem is extinguished. It's not revealed. It's like a fire that's extinguished in a coal. So, since it's such a far distance between a Yid and Hashem, how can we be the ones to affect by him this achlata? Beforehand we asked, how can we evoke by Hashem a revealed will? And we said, why? Because there was the hachlata already beforehand, because there was already the groundwork, because there was the foundation already that Hashem already decided to allow himself to be, and it would be a nice thing to be king. So now when the Yidden come ahead and coronate him, we're ready, we're there. So, and how did that come about? So we said because Hashem derived delight when he pictured what would be the avoid of tzaddikim, or amichon tzaddikim. But then the question still is, just like this, we had the same question about the revealed will to be a king, that we're just too far from Hashem to really be able to impact him. The same thing when it comes to the achlata. The same thing when it comes to the haskama, to the fact that he says to himself, it would be a nice thing to be a king. That's also too far. We're too far to be able to affect that. How can we do that? So then he goes on and says, in line 6, though we're talking about the nation, the Yidden, in other words, the way they are rooted in Hashem before the Tzimtzum, it's still the level of And then the Rebbe goes on and says, you know what? It's Hashem's choice. Nobody's really doing this to him. What's explained in other Amarim of Chassidus, that it's a matter of reshus, permission. In other words, it's a matter of choice. It's no one is twisting Hashem's arm. No one can make Hashem do this. Ukemaimer, like it says in Lashon Kabbalah, Bereish Hormenusa the Malka, at the beginning of the will or the permission of the king, Galif Glifu, he engraved an engraving Betihira Ilah, in the supernal brilliance and brightness. In other words, in Hashem's Ratzon, he made over there all the beginnings of engravings for the Seder Ishtalshlos. But the main point that matters for what we're talking about over here is the word Hurmenusa. Hurmenusa hu inyan harishus. It's also used in Gemara and Chazal language when you're giving over someone a power of attorney. In other words, you're giving him permission to act on your behalf. So Hurmenusa is a reshus. It's something that it's being allowed for. It's not that that Yidden can like force the situation. And what is explained in many Mamar Chassidus is as follows. In line 11, the Kivim Shakol Metzias Ha'am Ein of Be'erech Elav Yisbarach, since the entire existence of the nation is incomparable to the Eibishter, in a Mashem Misoyre Barasalam Lucha Chulu, the fact that he is awakened and inspired in a will to be a king, Harezer Rak V'chinas Rishus, it's only something that he's doing by his own permission. It's not something that, again, we are doing. Ubefrat, and this is especially so, al pi hayidu, according to what it's known. Even in the levels of Seder Ishtalshlus, that we say that the inspiration down here below is comparable to bring down an inspiration from above. It's only within Seder Ishtalshlus, within the Oilmas, not higher than Seder Ishtalshlus. So even there, it's also a matter of Rishus. Above, it's impossible to say that the inspiration down here below somehow forces and needs to make that there should be an inspiration from above. That itself, that our inspiration down here below draws down from Hashem something, that there's a certain type of quid pro quo, that itself is by Hashem's reshus, by Hashem's largesse, by Hashem's choice. It's not something that is obligatory. Therefore, therefore, when drawing down the inspiration from above, that the inspiration down here below is comparable to it because it's a level of Seder Ishtalshlus, is still in a matter of Reshus. How much more so is the thought and will that we spoke about previously, that agreement that Hashem thinks to himself, it would be a nice thing to be a king without actually having a wish to have a king. For sure, that's a level of Reshus, that over there, the inspiration down there below definitely has no way of touching that and reaching that. It's surely only in a way of Reshus. So even when we explain that's in a way of Reshus, we still need to understand how. Line 22 after the brackets, it's still insufficient in understanding how does the delight that Hashem have from the avoid of the Yidden cause that agreement, that type of decision that would be a nice thing to be a king. This is only applicable that there should be the level of Reshus and the level of our avoida, only in the level of Hashem's revealed powers. From the perspective of Hashem's essence, it's not applicable whatsoever, not even in a way of Reshus. So therefore, since Hashem's essence is completely removed from anything, it's not even possible to say that there's some type of reshus, an allowance for that what we are doing and will do, even if the past and the present are all mixed up, should affect Hashem's very essence, to draw down from Hashem's essence the level of, even that initial level that he agrees that would be a nice thing to be a king. So the Rebbe explains, how is it possible that from Hashem's essence should come down this level of agreement? So he says in line 25, the idea behind this is, the reason why he decided and he agreed and he said, it would be a nice thing to be a king, and therefore he made himself available to the coronation to inspire him to actually want to be a king. There's an even higher level, top of the 9th page of the Maimer, that the level of kingship is rooted in the essence even higher than the levels of the Koiches Hagiluyim. more so than any other power. We don't say Chachma, we don't say Chesed, we don't say Yisoid. None of these are rooted in the essence. Malchus is rooted in the essence. Like it's known, the metaphor that they said, any person that doesn't own land or doesn't own a home. It's known how we can make these two expressions of Chazal, or these two nuschos, these two versions of Chazal, fit with each other. Einei Adam, he's not considered a person. Since the idea of a home matters for the person to be a complete individual, גם כשאין יודע מזה כלל, ואפשר שלעולם לא יבוא הרצון בפועל. The Rebbe introduces now a third highest level in a Ratzon. There is the lowest level. We spoke about the Ratzon Hagoli, the revealed will, that already has Hashara B'Koyach and everything that will be afterwards with Poil. There's a higher level where it's called Hechlet or Heskim, that it's muskim by him, that it's something that he's agreed upon. It would be a nice thing to be a king. Then there's what Chassidus says, there's something called Ratzon HaMuchlet. Ratzon HaMuchlet means a deep-seated wish and will that is completely part of my essence, that I may never even be aware of it, and it could even be that it will never come out in actuality. And an example of this in our world is the will and the ratzon to have a home or to have land, which is something that may not actually come to fruition, and he may not even have ever a thought about it, but it's deep down because it's part of a person's very being. And the Rebbe says this will be a mashal for Hashem's malchus above, higher than Hashem's revealed will for kingship, higher than Hashem's thought about kingship. There is the Ratzon HaMuchlet, line 7, Valderech Zolamayla, in a similar vein it's above. Since Hashem desired to have a home down here below, in Inyan Habayis V'Adira, the idea of a home, the idea of a house and a home. That's the idea that the neshamas of Yidden are a home to Hashem's essence. This is rooted in Hashem's essential exaltedness of his very essence. It's beyond that type of level that he is higher than a nation, and therefore we're going to say, he's their is so far, and how can this be? How can this be connected? How can we do anything over there? It's beyond that whole relationship of the king being elevated from the nation. It's something more essential. So he says in line 13, because of the fact that Neshamas Yisrael are rooted in Hashem's essence. Over there in Hashem's essence, the will is already the decided will for kingship. Like we said before, that's the deepest, most innermost will. Since that is the case, that we have this connection in this innermost level, therefore, when Hashem consults in the neshamas of Yidden, meaning he sees the delight he will have from our avodah, nasa hachlota, so then after the Ratzon HaMuchlet, that deep-seated will becomes the Ratzon, and which is no way of an agreement. It would be a nice thing to be a king. And then afterwards comes out the revealed will to be a king, and then till we actually become a king, until he actually becomes a king in actuality. And based on all these different levels that we have to go through to draw down Hashem's kingship, the Rebbe is going to explain the different levels that we spoke about, maimak and oimek, and maimak in the plural, and maimak is deeper than oimek, etc.